I am live. You're live. Hello, folks. I'm live. Um, it is 10:40 at night on January 30th. Um, and I'm beaming in with a few thoughts that cross my mind today that are related, though they may not seem related. And now I can see people have arrived here, so thank you very much. So there were two things that I noticed today that caught my attention. And it won't be surprising, probably caught your attention too. One was that several journalists were arrested. Don Lemon was arrested. I believe the woman's name was Georgia Fort was arrested. Seemingly, Don Lemon has been like targeted for a while, and apparently he was reporting on a group of people who went into a church service where the pastor, I've been told, was actually an ICE agent or was supportive of ICE. Either way, they boomed into this church, and Don Lemon was reporting. And he said later, he interviewed the pastor, he interviewed people in the congregation. So he was trying to do a report as an independent journalist. And he was arrested, supposedly for that. It's not really, there's nothing he really did wrong. And he's been released. Georgia Fort has been released. I think there was at least one, if not two more journalists who were arrested. And that, for a lot of obvious reasons, there's so much happening now that it becomes easy to overlook some things. But for so many reasons, arresting journalists to silence them, right? To intimidate people into not saying things that the regime is not going to like. In the same way that we have the right to peaceably protest, a free press is pretty much a fundamental part of any kind of democratic government. And we have lots that we could say about how some mainstream media outlets have been reporting or not reporting on things in the semi-recent past. There's a lot to say. But regardless of what we think about the outlets, we need the outlets, at least independent outlets, but also the outlets that might be not doing their job. What they're supposed to be doing is, among other things, reporting on what government is doing, our government, the people who we gave power to tell us, to give us a sense of what's going on, because they are accountable to us. It makes me think about in the first early years of the government, when they were debating about the press and should the press go into the Senate, should the press not be allowed into the Senate? And I think it's Thomas Jefferson at the time who said something along the lines of, if we don't allow reporters into Congress, it's going to be the most corrupt body on the face of the earth. We need people to be able to see what's happening. Valid, right? So for any number of reasons, we need a free press. And arresting journalists is a gold star authoritarian move to silence opposition. So what we see every day, some new attempt to silence the opposition. So that's one. If there were a checklist of authoritarian things that you do when you're trying to grab power, arresting journalists is a big one. Another one has to do with education. And this was the second thing that I don't know if it was reported today, but I stumbled across it today. And that was Texas A&M has eliminated women's studies, has declared certain kinds of study of race and gender is not allowed, is reviewing the syllabi of all of the professors to see if they have things that are allowable now on them. So Texas A&M is just declaring essentially that race and gender and women's studies are not things that should be studied. They're not valid. Why? Because they enforce some kind of ideology. The doublespeak. You want to see enforcing ideology? How about cutting women's studies and race and gender out of the curriculum? But regardless of how logical that may be. So that I read in the news today that that's going on, and they cut the whole women's studies department, I believe. I'm sure this is going to be exploding in the near future too. But so here's the thing. So arresting journalists on the one hand, and Texas A&M sort of kissing up to the regime and trying to eliminate things that might upset them. They're both part of the same campaign, but in a sense, it's got a cultural edge, right? It's kind of a cultural campaign. And here's the interesting thing about political power, is that political power isn't only based on politics, it's based on culture as well. And culture is sneaky, right? Culture grabs you at a different level, like music or art. Culture affects us as people in some ways, and it can kind of get into your consciousness and affect your thoughts and how you're feeling in some pretty powerful ways. So if you want power, culture can be a great way to do it depending on how you deploy it. So go back with me for a moment to the 1790s. Trust me, it will be relevant. So in the 1790s, you had the Federalist Party, and they had power pretty much for the first 10 years of our government under the Constitution. And it was becoming apparent they were not super comfortable with democracy, and the Jeffersonian Republicans were more comfortable with some form of democracy. So the Federalists could kind of see the demographics might not be going for them, that they might not remain in power. And sure enough, the election of 1800 comes along and they lose power. And it's the first time power is shifted from one group of political orientation to another, from Federalists to Jeffersonian Republicans. So what do the Federalists do at this point? They have to get political power back, and they don't know if they're going to be able to do it just based on votes because they just lost a presidential election. So what they decide is a three-prong approach. And when I think of it as the 3 C's, although they didn't put it that way. They decide they're going to use religion, churches. They decide they're going to focus on education, classrooms. And now I've forgotten the 3rd C, church, classrooms. See, I'm really tired, guys. It'll come back to me. But the point I'm making here, and it could just be culture. The point I'm making here is the Federalists made sort of a soft invasion, church, classrooms, culture, because they knew, and they said to each other, how are you going to get power back? How are we going to do that? I know. We can use religion. We can get in on education. We can be shaping culture in various ways. We could do that. And we will get power back because we will be shaping the way people think. Now, that's a long-term way of getting power, but it's a way of getting power. So in addition to what we're seeing now with an attack on journalists and an attack on education as being an authoritarian move, it's also a political grab, just generally speaking. It's what you do when you know that the demographics are against you. You find other ways to grab at people. Alexander Hamilton, when he realizes the Federalists are going down, I believe he says this in 1802. He says, you know, those Jeffersonian Republicans, They really appealed to the masses in a really powerful way. And the French Revolution got them all riled up. Like, yay, the French are doing a version of what we did here. Yay. So Hamilton clearly thinks to himself, what can we do that's going to get them riled up in the same way? And he comes up with this idea. Why don't we create Christian constitutional societies? And what he wants is Christianity, he thinks, is going to get people all riled up and passionate about supporting it. Constitutional societies, because they'll be all riled up by religion to support the Constitution, or certainly how the Federalists interpret it. That's sort of weirdly modern sounding, like, I know, let's use religion to get political power. But that's what they were saying. That's what they were doing. So part of what I'm trying to say here tonight is there are lots of obvious ways in which the regime is grabbing and trying to get power. And a lot of them are happening in the streets. Again, they're killing people in the street. They've abducted people in the street. They're barging into people's homes. All of these are violating constitutional rights in a variety of different ways. But they're also coming in around the edges. Religion, we've known, was being deployed in a lot of ways, but culture as well, they're coming for. And although they want to silence the press, they'd also like to control what is in the press. So we're watching, someone says, what is old is made new again. Yeah, you know, if you don't have political power, yeah, there's certain ways that you're going to glom onto to try and get power back. So I wanted to make that point because I think it's easy to see things in isolation. Like, you know, they arrested journalists. This is horrible, which it is. Texas A&M, they're eliminating women's studies. That's horrible, which it is. They're not separate. They're the same campaign to, and they say, in the case of Texas A&M, as I said a moment ago, we don't like leftist ideology. We don't want ideology in the classroom. So you're no longer really allowed to teach about race and gender. Okay, that's imposing ideology into the classroom, but they're using that as a way to grab control, to make the sorts of people who they assume are going to be their opposition, to make them silence themselves because they'll be scared in one way or another. So that's my larger point tonight, is part of the same thing. It's part of this ongoing campaign. Someone says thoughts on the Epstein files. Okay, so it's also a campaign of attack, power grabbing, and to some degree distraction. I'm not going to talk in great detail about the Epstein files because, from what I've seen, they're repulsive. I mean, even more repulsive than some of the recent repulsive Epstein files. So I'm not going to talk about them. I'm just going to say the ways in which they're avoiding, delaying, releasing the files and then cutting things out, removing things, tells you, it's an obvious point, but I'll say it anyway, there's really bad stuff in the Epstein files. And if some of what came out today is evidence of that, there's really scary, ugly, repulsive stuff in those files. At this point, you know, is that ugliness going to have an impact on the power of the regime? I have no idea. But the Epstein files coming out, and I guess they come out today, I think, right? So it's a Friday, just before the weekend. If you know that news is really bad, if it ends up being told or released on a Friday afternoon, particularly, right? Oh, people won't pay attention. It's the weekend. Let's just sort of slip this over here. So I've only glanced at those files, and what I saw was so nasty that I have not continued to look. But anyway, that's a different form of culture. you guys are on tonight. You guys are going. I don't want to see what happens is I get attracted to the comments and then I start wanting to talk to you. Uh, Jules says, I fear things are going to get a lot darker. I come on here to talk to you about what I'm thinking about and to talk a little bit about what I'm hanging on to in this moment. And I don't want to be misleading, and I don't want to be like a Pollyanna, and I don't want to be saying it's all going to be okay, because I would be lying if I said that. Do I think ultimately we will be in a good place? I believe that. Do I know how long that's going to take? I have no idea. And I do think it's going to get uglier before it gets better. And I'm just going to tell the truth. But that said, as I've said one of these recent nights, whenever that was, we're in a different place now post Minneapolis than we were before. Goofy thing to say, but really, we just got an education in protest. We just got an education in neighborliness, right? That they were helping each other as neighbors, and that was their form of protest. And we watched that happen, and we saw the power of that, and we saw it had an impact. And then today, it's been going on for a while, but particularly today, all over the United States and actually all over the world, people are showing support and marching for Minneapolis. So even though there's not going to be a sort of instant touchdown of victory on the part of people who are against this regime, all of the things that are being done to resist it, they add up. They matter, even if it doesn't feel like they do. And that's part of, I talked about this this morning on my History Matters webcast, that there's a wide spectrum of ways in which you can resist. Big, wide spectrum from, making phone calls, helping neighbors who are afraid to leave their apartment, any number of things. Some people, I think it was some people on here in a recent night or two said, or somewhere said that they had been here, they'd listened to this, and they went and knocked on doors of their neighbors to meet their neighbors because they actually decided that was a good idea, which it is. So there's a huge number of ways in which you can have an impact right now, despite the multi-level campaign that is being launched against us. And it all matters. No single thing in and of itself is going to solve this problem. But if we are all in the mix, if we all are willing to stand up and push back and stand side by side with each other, that matters. It really matters. That's the wall of resistance. That's what's going to get us ultimately out of the hole that we're in. Will be us learning lessons like what we just learned from Minneapolis, learning not only how to come together, but that we have to come together, that we have to be able to support each other to push back against a regime of force and suppression and repression. Think about, just generally, think about in your life, people who you come in contact with in a variety of different ways. Think about the number of people that you come into contact with who are angry, scared or angry. I come across a lot of angry people who are just angry at what's going on and they don't know what to do with it, right? I'm always angry now. I live in angry, which is maybe why I don't sleep so well. So I'm angry a lot. I'm a lot of other things too, but I'm angry. If you think about all those people who are angry, those are all people who in one way or another have the oomph and the will to want to stand up against the thing that they're angry at. So all of the emotion that you see and all of the people who are angry about what's going on, the fact that they're angry means, number one, they're paying attention, but more important, number two, they don't like it. And many of those people, not all of them, might be willing to do things as simple as helping a neighbor that's going to be opposed to what the regime wants to do as they find their way into a variety of different cities and towns and try to take over. There's a really good article in The Atlantic by Adam Server about, he went to Minneapolis, he watched what was happening, and it has a lot of really important, I think, lines in it. And one of the things he says is, that the MAGA regime folks thought that they'd storm into Minneapolis and then break everything, break everybody. They would all, fall apart and there'd be divergences of all kinds, and then they'd be in control. And that just broke over the back of the unity of the people in Minneapolis, right? Minneapolis just proved, nope, it's not gonna be that easy for you. No. And in some ways, that was probably a big surprise to the folks who did the storming in the invasion of Minneapolis. Because what's interesting, a lot of the comments that you're seeing, oh, they're paid protesters, right? The people in Minneapolis, they're paid protesters. So number one, they want people to believe that because it makes them look good and it makes their opposition look bad. But to some degree, it makes me think that there are some people who honestly can't fathom Americans voluntarily standing up for something they believe in and peaceably protesting for it and supporting their neighbors. That people are willing to do that, not for money, but for rights and values and humanity and empathy. That's all the Server article. I have a quote that I talked about this morning that I do not have in front of me here, but it's quite wonderful about how immoral people, their main fear is discovering that actually they're the outsiders and that other people actually have different values, and the majority of people do, and it's them that's the weird minority. I encourage you to find that article because I found it really revealing and uplifting in its way, because it talks about all of the ways in which people stood up to help people. And that seems like such a easy solution. It's not easy in the time that we're in. It really isn't. And it seems really obvious, but it's scary, right? I mean, a lot of us here, user, lots of numbers says easier to be angry than sad. I don't know. I'm pretty good at both right now. I'm angry. I'm sad. I'm occasionally fearful. I'm confused. I'm lots of things. I'm sure a lot of you are too. But that's okay, right? I mean, that means we're human. That's a good thing. We like that. And all of those feelings that I have are reminders to me about how abnormal this situation is. How totally off the tracks, abnormal, wrong, immoral this is. So your gut feelings that are telling you, in one way or another, that's your psyche. That's your emotions telling you this is so weird and wrong. I don't know what to do about it. So that matters as much as I don't enjoy being angry, outraged, sad, fearful, or whatever else it is. That's a reminder, not the most pleasant reminder. Oh, Rosie, that was a chirp. Not the most pleasant reminder, but a reminder, an important one, and one that's important to bear in mind, that what we're seeing, most of what we're seeing in many ways, is abnormal. It is not normal. And don't let these folks normalize it. And that's true for where I began with the idea about culture, right? Culture is a sneaky way to sort of come in and get at people. And that's an easy thing to normalize, because you find yourself sort of moving in and liking something and thinking it's good. And then pretty much you're kind of in the influence of some form of culture, and you don't realize you've just accepted something that you probably don't want to accept. I guess that's another way. I don't know enough formally about cults, but it's kind of a reminder of that kind of power. But don't let the sort of culture mongers confuse you about the many, many, many ways in which this is abnormal. And don't let the simple fact that the United States throughout its history has been undemocratic, has been unfair, has been giving some people more justice than other people. All of that is true. All of that is true. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't be working to claim it, to defend it, and then think about this, to be better in how we use it. I just saw someone, as I was saying this, I saw someone say, Black Americans know this is normal. Well, but it shouldn't be, right? That yes, America has been doing some of these things in a different way for a long time. And maybe at Texas A&M, you're not allowed to learn that anymore, but that actually is a fact. But don't let the failures of this country erase the possibilities of this country. We can be better than we've been in the past. And now, probably for the first time in most of our lives, we understand the fragility of democracy. We understand, people who have not had this done to them before, what it really feels like, what it means. Everything we're experiencing now is going to have an impact on where we end up. And I don't know where we're going to end up, but we're not going to end up in the same place where we began. And if we are together and united about this, we can help end up in a place that is better. We can do so much better than we've done in the past. And I believe that. I truly do. So I guess maybe I've gone on already for 27 minutes. There you go. Someone says, Tim Snyder today said, do at least one thing when fighting back. Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Broad spectrum. Lots of things you can do. It can feel like a little thing. If we all do little things, that's a big thing. It really is. I believe that. I think that's true. And after this, people come and contact me in a variety of ways and talk about the little things they're doing because of this community here, because of everyone coming together here and sharing what they're feeling, and all of us talking about the moment, and everyone here inspiring each other. That's what this is about, right? I mean, we're learning from each other. We're inspiring each other. We are being here as a community. Community is it. Community is the answer. And you guys are here doing that on your own. The fact that you come and that there's so many of you here, look at you guys. I mean, look at you guys. That's pretty amazing that you come here for this. So anyway, I think that's mostly what I wanted to talk about tonight. I realized last night I left out the dramatic conclusion of these normal conversations. And that is, on the one hand, the need for chutzpah, chutzpah, and the value of the whistle, the power of the whistle in showing ICE and various other agents there are people watching, there are people witnessing. They're not acting in darkness and isolation. They're in broad public, and people can see the sins that they're committing despite the masks behind which they think they're hiding. Okay. Someone just said, I just ordered, Sylvia, I just ordered my can of chutzpah. I went to a museum in Lower Manhattan, a Jewish museum, and saw this and bought it just because I thought it was a cool thing. And I didn't think it would become like a resistance icon, but that's kind of what it's become. So anyway, you guys, thank you as ever for coming. I will try to be here tomorrow night. I'm on leave this semester from Yale, which means I'm going to be home more than I typically am. So I can't promise that I'll be here every night. The radio show that did an episode on us on this, they said they were going to watch the episode before they interviewed me, and that was the night I didn't do it. So they were like, was there chaos in the streets? Like, well, no, there wasn't chaos in the streets, but I felt kind of bad. I fell asleep. Anyway, okay, all of you guys, I wish I could engage with all of you. This is normally, sometimes I'll even turn off chat because I want to engage with all of you. But anyway, I'm having a long goodbye. I will see you guys very soon in one way or another. Take care. Stay warm. It's scary outside. And solidarity, unity, chutzpah. See you soon, folks.